very, very good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are joining us from around the world. And thank you, Victor and team, for putting this global summit together. It's amazing. And I'm Deepika Prabhakar. I'm absolutely thrilled to be here with you at the FinOps Weekly Summit today. Little about me. I am a senior customer solutions manager at AWS, where I have the privilege of working as a trusted advisor to many financial organizations on their cloud transformation journey. And over 2 decades in the technology leadership, I have discovered my true passion lies in helping the enterprises, not just moving to the cloud, but truly leveraging it to accelerate the innovation, optimize their cost, and also achieve the overall operational excellence. So what I bring to every engagement is the combination of that technical knowledge and the business acumen, because at the end of the day, it's all about helping organizations harness the cloud capability to better serve their end customers. And along with me today, I have Haley. Haley, why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks for having me, Victor, and very nice meeting everybody. My name is Haley Kozak. I'm a Cloud FinOps architect on the Optics team, and my main job is to help AWS customers, mainly focusing on healthcare and life science customers, to help them develop a long-term cloud efficiency strategy. So happy to get into our discussion today.
All right. So today we are here to walk you through how to build and nurture a robust FinOps culture that kind of transforms the cloud cost management from like a siloed responsibility to an organization-wide commitment. Because let's face it, how many of us struggle with managing cloud cost? And FinOps really goes far beyond just simple cost cutting because it is a very strategic discipline that requires cross-cultural and cross-functional collaboration. So let's dive into and explore how we can make FinOps work for your organization. And let me start off by asking you a simple question. What do you think is your biggest challenge for the organization where you are today in building a FinOps culture? Please take a moment to think about it and use the chat to share your response. Again, what do you think is the biggest challenge your organization faces with building a FinOps culture? So with that said, we'll watch out to see your responses and compare it to this global data in a bit. And this data comes from none other than the FinOps Foundation's State of FinOps survey. And it reveals some very fascinating insights about how our priorities are evolving, right? And looking at this chart, you can see the comparison between 2024 and 2025 priorities. What stands out immediately is that reducing waste and managing unused resources remains the top concern, and for a good reason, right? And here is what I have learned from working with organizations at different stages of the FinOps journey. So either the organization is in the beginner, where quick wins are very important. Like while waste reduction kind of remains top priority for such organizations, I've seen them achieve like really 15 to 30% cost savings in their first initial stages of their maturity in addressing the obvious inefficiencies like idle instances, attacking the unattached storage or over provisioned resources. And then let's say they move to a more of an intermediate level of maturity. And what is fascinating is how those priorities shift as the organization as well mature. Because in the early stage of the FinOps team, they focus on the cost by reducing the waste elimination. But when they mature, they spend almost 60 to 70% of their time on strategic activities like commitment management or forecasting, better budgeting, right? This also tells us we are not just getting better at finding problems, we are getting better at preventing them. And then in the third, more advanced category of customers that I have seen them tackle that these priorities in isolation, see like let's say 40% less success is achieved when they are tackled in a more of an isolated approach But when they take this approach to a collaborative model, for example, accurate forecasting is not just about the finance problem. It requires engineering teams to share their roadmaps, business teams to communicate their growth plans. So, this perfectly sets the stage for why we need a collaborative culture, which is exactly what we are going to be exploring in the next few slides. So now that we understand what practitioners are prioritizing, FinOps practitioners are prioritizing, let's talk about how to build that culture that can actually deliver on these priorities, right? In my mind, I think the collaborative FinOps culture has four main foundational building blocks. And here's the critical point. You need all of them to be working together, all four of them to be working together. Again, not in silos. So first, the sponsorship. And this isn't just about having someone's name on an organizational chart saying he's a FinOps or a he or a she is a FinOps sponsor. You need a single threaded leader who can actually align resources and turn the strategy into real results. So without this, your FinOps initiatives will struggle to get the attention and the resources they deserve. So the most successful FinOps programs have sponsors who don't just provide air cover, but actively participate. At one organization that I worked with, the chief technology officer started attending the weekly cost reviews, and that single action increased the engineering team engagement by almost 300%. People started attending those meetings and providing responses and actively participating. And then, secondly, in the ownership category, this is about establishing a culture of accountability. Someone needs to be there to own the outcomes, not just the process. So this could either be a centralized, a decentralized, or a hybrid approach, but it must be very, very clear in terms of who owns what. So I've seen companies like create beautiful racy matrices. But then the real test is when the costs spike unexpectedly, does someone immediately know they are accountable? So that's the question, right? That you need your organization to answer. So the best ownership model that I have seen that works is to create a cost champion model where people aren't necessarily in finance, but take pride in their team's cost efficiency and they celebrate it. So, third is the partnership block. And this is where many organizations stumble. So, true collaboration between the technology, the finance, and the business stakeholders doesn't happen by accident. It requires intentional relationship building and shared incentives. So here is a practical tip, right? For a successful FinOps team, they spend as much time building these relationships as they do in analyzing the data. So one team that I know has a rule. Before sending any cost report, they have a conversation. So it's like as simple as this practice that transformed the FinOps organization from being a cost police to a trusted advisor. So finally, the foundation block, which is where all the reports, the tools, the automation, the governance, and the training, and all that you need for enabling everything else. So without the solid foundation, even the best intentions will crumble. So the most mature FinOps organizations I have worked with have automated almost like 60 to 70% of their reporting. But here's the key. They use that automation to create more time for strategic conversations and not like eliminate the human interaction. So remember, FinOps is a team effort, not a solo marathon. Again, I repeat, it's a team effort, not a solo marathon. But here's what really means. It's not about everyone doing everything. It's about everyone understanding their role in the big picture. So I've seen too many organizations try to make FinOps the responsibility of like one person or one team, but it simply doesn't work at scale. And when you're trying to scale in the cloud. So let's deeper dive into each of these building blocks in the subsequent slides. So let's start with the sponsorship because without this, the other building blocks become much harder to establish. So I want to address four critical questions about executive sponsorship. Why do you need FinOps executive sponsorship? Let's simply put, FinOps sits at the intersection of three traditionally siloed functions like engineering, finance, and business operations. And your sponsor becomes the bridge between these worlds. And they have the authority to break down the silos and influence to drive the organizational change. So here is a practical reality, right? The FinOps initiative touch every part of the organization, and without that executive backing, you'll be spending 80% of your time fighting for access to data, to people, to resources, instead of just driving results. So I've seen brilliant FinOps practitioners and FinOps leads fail because they try to influence, but they don't have the authority. How do you select the right sponsor? Look for leaders who have vested interest in both the financial outcome and the technical delivery. Like someone who already asks the cost questions in the architecture reviews, right? And this might be like a CTO who is measured on cost efficiency, or a CFO who understands the technology investment, or even a business unit leader who's accountable for a P&L. The key is finding that one person who understands both the finance and the technical implications of the cloud decisions. So the best sponsors that I have worked with weren't necessarily the most senior people in the organization, but they were the ones who naturally connected that bridge between the finance and technical decisions. And one of the most effective sponsors I knew for one of my customer was a VP of engineering who had just a P&L responsibility. And how do you gain their support, right? This is about like speaking their language, not just the FinOps language. Understanding their goals first. Are they focused on growth? Are they focused on profitability? Or are they focused on innovation speed? Then show them how those FinOps will enable those goals. Present the data, not just the concepts, and show them the potential impact in terms of what they care about. And here is like a practical approach that I have seen work. Start with a cost story about their specific area. Like, don't lead with frameworks and methodologies and dashboards and reports, but rather lead with, here is what we discovered about your team's cloud spend, and here is the opportunity, right? Make it more personal and relevant to their goals. And how do sponsors drive their success, right? Like, let's say now you have secured sponsorship, but the sponsor's role is to set very clear KPIs that matter to the business. They would establish regular tracking, review process, and they would empower their teams to make the decision. So they don't micromanage all the detail, but they hold people accountable for the outcomes. So the best sponsors I have worked with do three things. First, they ask the cost questions in every technical review. Second, they celebrate the cost optimization wins publicly, not just the savings initiatives, but the innovation that these savings will enable. And third, they protect the FinOps team from becoming cost police by emphasizing enablement over enforcement. So remember, your sponsor's job isn't to do FinOps, it is to create the condition where FinOps can actually succeed. And the second area is about ownership. So because once you have the sponsorship, you need to decide how the FinOps responsibilities will be distributed across the organization. There is no one size fits all approach here, but there are three main models to consider. The centralized ownership, which kind of works well when you're just starting your FinOps journey, or when you have like a complex shared infrastructure. This might be through like a center of excellence, a dedicated FinOps team, or even like a cloud business office. The advantage is consistency and deep expertise. But here's the key. Even the centralized teams need to be embedded within the engineering teams. The most successful centralized FinOps teams I have seen spend almost 50% of their time sitting with the development teams, not in the conference rooms. And then the second model is the decentralized ownership, which kind of pushes the responsibility directly to the technology teams. This works beautifully when you have a very mature, autonomous team who can handle both technical and financial aspect of their services. However, the advantage is accountability at the point of decision making. Again, it is the accountability at the point of decision making. The challenge is ensuring, again, consistency and avoiding all the duplication of effort. But this is a very powerful model. It requires what I call the cost literacy across your engineering teams. So one organization that I worked with created a simple rule. Every team lead needs to be able to explain their team's cost trend in under 60 seconds. This simple requirement transformed how the teams thought about their spending. And the third model is actually the hybrid approach. And this is what I see working best in large organizations, combining the best of the centralized and the decentralized model. And you have like a central team setting all the standards, providing the tools, managing the enterprise-wide commitments, while the individual teams own their day-to-day cost optimization. It's like having a central IT security team that sets the policies, but every developer is responsible for secure coding, right? It's very similar to that. So regardless of which model you choose, you need to establish very clear processes for cost awareness, visibility, and transparency. So this includes like regular review meetings, clear metrics, and critically, a FinOps champion program that creates the advocates throughout your organization. The best champions aren't necessarily the most technical people. They are the most influential people. Again, they are not the most technical people. They are the most influential people. So look for those engineers that go that others go to for advice and the team leads that people respect. So give them the tools, give them the knowledge, and they will drive adoption better than any mandate that is set. So just take an accountability test. And here is how you know whether the ownership model is working or not. When costs go up, does someone immediately feel responsible? When costs go down, does someone feel proud? If the answer to either question is no, you need to refine your model. So take that small accountability test in your organization and determine what's best for you. So the key insight here is ownership is not just about who does the work, it's about who's accountable for the outcomes. So make sure that's crystal clear in whatever model you choose. So let me turn it over to Haley to talk about the next few pillars.
Thanks, Deepika. So, in my opinion, I feel like ownership, sponsorship, and partnership, they're all intertwined together. And for partnership, I'll start with the quote from Helen Keller: "Alone, we can do so little; together, we can do so much." And it's very true, and it applies to FinOps, applies to life, applies to work. And like Deepika said, FinOps Champion Program is such a good way to kind of pull people together from different functions. And this is a good way to involve all the key stakeholders throughout your cloud journey. And by key stakeholders, I mean either it's a financial leads, your product owner, your application owners, it could be your business unit owners or engineering teams, or even the third parties, consultants, right? And then how do we create a FinOps Champion Program? We need to first define the key members from all those involving teams, right? Not I said finance and technology teams on the slide, but it goes beyond them. And then you need to establish a regular meeting cadence, and during that cadence, define the common discussion topics. Those topics can be, from talking about getting the visibility to our cost and usage, and all the way to creating that standard procedure for handling your spend variance, and then strategically planning for your cloud investment, integration with existing financial processes, and also even forecasting better. And typically, if you don't mind to move to the next slide. Yeah, so now we're getting to the foundations of collaborative FinOps culture. In our opinion, The first one will be set up targeted report for different personas. We all know that getting that cost visibility is very important for any FinOps practice, but people also say a report is only good as the people who use it. So how do we make sure that people understand the data and use them to make informed decisions? So first, define the reporting requirements, right? Collaborate with each persona that we mentioned earlier to determine the specific metrics they need to make decisions and the context they require. And then also establish a FinOps data model, integrate your billing and usage data from various cloud providers, and organize it into a central data store. Also, implement consistent tagging. Everybody knows how important tagging is, so standardize it and enforce tagging policy across all the cloud resources that you have. And then create tailored dashboard. This is essential to make sure everybody care about even going into the dashboard to look at it. You've got to make sure it speaks their language. For example, you create a report for executives. Executives needs high-level strategic report to make sure accountability, and they only focus on business value rather than just granular usage metrics. So a high-level visual dashboard showing KPIs or maybe a monthly, quarterly summary report highlighting significant trends and cost drivers will be beneficial. Versus engineers and cloud architects, they require granular, timely data to make that cost-aware decision choices. So they might want to see like team-specific cost and usage report breaking down by service, application, or environment, for example. And then finance team, they may need detailed, accurate report for budgeting, forecasting, and reporting to the broader organization. They will need visibility into how shared costs are allocated and consumed. And then also automate and schedule report. Automate the delivery of reports to relevant stakeholders through either email, Slack, or whichever platform that your organization is using. And then review it. Review the reports with a timely manner to make sure it's still relevant to the stakeholders. And then next one is leverage cloud native tools. Make sure, I know some people may use third-party tools, but make sure you check out your cloud native tools. My team or me myself always recommend customers to look at what you have already for free, right? Maybe you can find some tools that can really benefit your organization, and educate and train your teams. Sometimes when we talk to the central FinOps team, they may be well aware of those tools, but then down to the application team, they may not. So how to provide that training, we'll mention in a little bit. Also work with partner teams to establish cloud and technology governance. For example, you can work with the engineering team to define modernization policies, or you can work with finance team to define commitment policies, set up budget alerts, set up cost anomaly detection. And you can also work with your architecture team to set up cost optimization review for new deployment or have regular architecture assessment. You can also work with data team or maybe even legal team to define storage lifecycle and retention policies. Also, of course, depending on your organization, you may have to work with multiple teams to create that tagging policy. And we also have automation. We all know the benefit of automation. It helps to remove that manual routine work and enable proactive governance. For example, you can automate mandatory tagging, cost allocation, instant scheduling. You can terminate idle and underutilized resources. But sometimes one size fits all doesn't, it can trigger false positive. So people may not even paying attention to the alert that you're setting up. So the policies, it has to be tailored to specific workloads and business contexts. So for example, a development server may be automatically shut down during the weekends, but then a mission critical production environment will be protected from the same policy. And then we also have cloud best practice onboarding, right? Does your company have something similar, or is it mandatory within your organization? This is something, you don't want to just limit it to the tech teams, but also provide tailored training materials for all the personas that we mentioned earlier. Also, share your success stories. If you do you have a mechanism existing to celebrate FinOps success? You can share the success stories on your dedicated platform, maybe a forum or hands meeting, a Confluence during office hour or internal sites, newsletter, things like that. Yeah, but last but not the least, try to incentivize through positive reinforcement. It is crucial to gamify, especially FinOps Foundation, keep talking about gamification. And my team also do something called FinHack, FinOps Hackathon. So basically, think of a way to create that engagement, and you can provide training education at the same time, but also make it fun to make people earn some swags. Okay, so that's all I have. Now the last slide, Deepika, if you don't mind. Yeah, want to have something for people to take away today. Really just to remember, like Deepika mentioned before, it's not a solo marathon, right? It's teamwork. Teamwork is everything. You need to collaborate to elevate. And then also remember the strong foundations that we mentioned earlier. You need the tooling, you need the training, and the teamwork to make everything happen. Thank you very much, everybody.